Now we're moving on to Stephen Knott, and he's going to set up his computer. I don't know what happened to the microphone, but maybe we can just send it down to the, yeah, where we're sitting. I'm going to do the presentation of you while you're standing here setting up the computer. So Stephen Knott is a writer, researcher, and lecturer in craft theory and history. He's the author of the book Amateur Craft, History and Theory. It was out on Bloomsbury in 2015, and has written articles and review for Design and Culture and West 86, a journal of decorative arts, design history and material culture, crafts, ceramic review, textile history, art jewelry forum, and the Norwegian Kunst og Kultur. It's actually in English, but it's a Norwegian paper, peer-reviewed paper. He has contributed essays to the edited volumes Surface Tensions, Collaborating Through Crafts, and actually one of our publications, Documents on Contemporary Craft, Materiality Matters, which was out in 2014. And he has contributed to a number of artist catalogs, not curated last year's iteration of Tendenser at Gallery F15 titled Give It Time, the biennial showcased of contemporary craft, and edited and contributed an essay to accompanying catalog. He's one of the editors of Journal of Modern Craft and is a lecturer in critical and historical studies at Kingston University. So welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Andre. Thank you very much for the invitation and for coming today. We're going to start with a bit of video. So, in a pale grey slate boiler suit in front of an ordinary work table, Jenny Norberg grasps one ball of quick-drying clay, splats it on the surface, followed by another of a terracotta colour. She then drives a shop-bought candle into the top. She repeats the process 5 times. Once finished, she stands in the middle of the shot, hands touching on the work surface, staring straight into the camera. And there you have it, a candle holder. Ta-da! So this, if you like something handmade, here it is, she seems to be saying to us. Here is handmade in its full force. Norberg's candle holders are part of her 3 to 5 seconds rapid handmade production series, which brings the viewer directly into the making process. We see matter shaped in front of our eyes. Norberg's stance is playful, however. She looks straight at the viewer. The film is flat and symmetrical. She seems to be saying, well, you want it? Here it is. Here is the material engagement that you're so calling for. It has a curious formal parallel with Edouard Manet's Bar at Folies Bergère of 1886 in terms of the placement of the body in front of the table. Both works show the same impassive conveyance to the viewer of material things. In Manet's case, it's the delights of the Parisian bourgeois entertainment. In Norberg's case, it's the spectacle of material transformation. But are we still looking at the same kind of capitalist object? Are the same questions directed towards the viewer in both instances? Well, you can see it. So what? Can you feel it? Does it matter? And what will you do? So Norberg's work that I started with was part of Tendenser 2018, which I was lucky enough to curate at Gallery F15 Punkte. In this exhibition, I wanted to investigate the relationship between craftspeople, material and time. The title, Give It Time, was a reference to how time is often presumed to be integral to craft. But also I wanted to provoke the audience to think about how much time they were prepared to spend with the exhibition. I wanted to urge viewers and give them time to not get distracted by other things in this distractible world of smartphone technologies, and just think about dwelling, looking, experiencing, and even eating. We put slices of the famous Alby Kringle on show alongside a slow TV film of the pastries being made in one of the ground floor rooms of the gallery. So in many respects, the concerns of this exhibition map over to the exhibitions of New Materialisms, the book that's prompted today's seminar, and indeed, and kind of bringing attention basically to how we are anchored in a sensuous material world where vision or seeing is just one of the 5 senses and shouldn't be privileged. Matter has agency, as many of the presentations have already shown you, and we can see this most clearly perhaps in process, how matter is determined by the making hand and determines the making hand. So in this exhibition I wanted to highlight these processes of making by thinking about different contexts of time in which craftspeople make stuff, from the instantaneous to the unfinished. And this focus on process provided a lens through which to observe and think about clingy, sticky, grubby, ephemeral, everyday materiality. And New Materialism's concern with how matter has a much larger role in how we understand and think about craft, art and culture at large. I hope to have brought together in this show objects of different media that were both trivial and marvellous at the same time, and worthy of this kind of deep aesthetic contemplation. And in the foyer just outside you have the catalogue for the exhibition, which contains essays that relate to it. So in this effort to show material behaviour in time, I did use a lot of film, one of which you've already seen a small clip of. Like Norberg's 3 to 5 minutes rapid handmade production, I've suggested in my blurb for today that mediation by film and video of craft process could be the new in New Materialisms. And I'm thinking of the predominance of YouTube and how much it plays a part in our society and our learning and our understanding of craft. But I don't think the idea of new being related to video and screen is convincing to any philosopher well versed in object-orientated ontology, but the frequency of our engagement with craft through online video streaming, the process video and film, is really palpable. We demand, at the moment it seems, all of our senses to be excited, elicited, arisen, but the primary channel through which we do this is video, film, screen. If we want craft, we either watch it, or if we are makers, we make sure to film it. So to respond and draw attention to these issues in Tendenser 2018, every film of craft or making taking place was accompanied by the material residue, the result of that process. So we had 3 of Norberg's candlesticks. Alongside the film of the Alby Kringle being made, we had several slices of Alby Kringle, giving the room a very sugary, soft aroma. In the next room, alongside Norberg's candlesticks here, is Silas Studio's Newton bucket vessels, which stand on the tall plinths there that you see. And alongside this, the machine that was used to make these bowls is presented to the right there. Upstairs, the work of the Performing Labour Project, a collaboration between artists Daniel Peltz, Sissy Westerberg, and the Reimir glass factory in rural Sweden, paired objects alongside videos of those objects in motion. What this dual presentation hopefully demonstrated was the liveness of objects in these different material contexts, and also the importance of bringing process to the fore in an appreciation or understanding of the work. The videos expanded the narratives, the meaning, or the documentation of how these objects came into being. They also tied them, which is quite important to me, to the idea of the everyday. So, for example, another example is the live demonstration of Silo Studios' Silo Studios' Newton Bucket series, where Silo Studio did a live performance of making one of their bowls. So here, Oscar Wanlis and Atua Apaccio of Silo Studio created a bowl by mixing together a resin mixture, carefully combining it into a soup, pouring it into the machine that then spins around and then quickly creates the form, which then dries. There was careful consideration, as you can see, of this pile of resin. This certainly was not Pollock-like abstract, flippant expressionism. What was done by this live performance was that the audience was brought in direct contact with the transmutation of matter. Live craft demonstration in the gallery, in this regard, is quite impressive, but there is nothing new to it to an extent. Machinery is not immune to being considered an aesthetic object or something of aesthetic interest. The most popular room of the 1851 Great Exhibition in London was allegedly the Gallery of Machines, row upon row of different devices that were powering Britain's industrial expansion. Glenn Adamson, in The Invention of Craft, stated how the Great Exhibition, and this room in particular, showed how the Victorian era was entranced by trickery, but also by explanation. And a machine does both of those things. It explains how something happens, yet it seems to make the magic more profound. And I think we see this dialectic playing out in our own era, where spectacle, magic, and trickery go alongside the desire for evidence and proof and explanation. Silas Machine did not only Silas Machine did not only explain, it also disrupted the notion of showing the audience a finished, discrete, autonomous object, just the vessel. It brought direct attention to the contexts of production. I suppose this might be evidence of new materialism operating within the gallery space, showing both the finished object and what it was relied upon to come into being. Similarly, as another kind of instance where the autonomous object was challenged, the slow TV live filming of the Alby Kringle baking, again, the autonomy of the singular artwork is disrupted by this delectable, sweet, honey, almond smell of the room and a pile of food. So clearly, if you're eating that, your judgment as an independent viewer of the object is perhaps being suspended, or you're being coerced or duped into a sugary, soporific state, compelled to give in the show time. Upstairs in Daniel Peltz and Sissy Westerberg's Performing Labour project, the autonomy of film and object on plinth is threatened, debased, or as I would argue, enriched by the central placement of what these two people are looking at, the product catalogue. This product catalogue was integral to the Performing Labour project, where they didn't just want to create art objects from their collaboration with the Raymere glass factory, they wanted to create a product line. The product catalogue followed the format, layout, and the graphic layout of a regular product catalogue, and was left lying on coffee tables within the factory, blending into the everyday experience of being and working in this space. It presents artworks as commercial design, And this is very much tied in with what Peltz and Westerberg were trying to do with the residency, where they were trying to get artists to match and mirror what the glass workers were doing. So sharing similar breaks, having the same salary, sharing similar space. The outputs of the performing labour project are much more intimately tied into the fold of the operations of the glass factory. So we've got these three kind of areas in which the autonomy of the art object is somehow questioned. The presence of the machine that went to make it, adding food, kind of eliciting the sense of taste, and bringing in the kind of emphatically bringing in the idea of a product line. All of these things are kind of dirtying the idea of these objects being fine art, or like, as I said, enriching it. So let's turn to the spectacle, and this is Under Egil Jonsson's 3.64 seconds of artistic labour, which is part of the performing labour project. So it's another collaboration with Reimir Glass Factory. So Jonsson here, seen to your right, is not making the glass that, or making the object that sort of you see being made here. The glass smears across the hot shop floor. Like Norberg film, he problematizes our thirst for evidence as an audience. Are we satisfied with this documentation of artistic labor? Is it art? Is the artist earning his wage? Is Jonsson, though, could be seen as parodying the role of the conceptual artist, who often uses fabricators extensively to achieve spectacular products, yet retains singular authorship through complex non-disclosure agreements. There is a real allure to live material transformation, as seen in any kind of tourist hot shop, where you kind of see a glass demonstration, kind of long, hot, sort of molten sand being shaped into the form in a kind of matter of seconds. And it's something that I clearly had an interest in from a young age. This is a photo I took as a 10-year-old boy when our primary school went to a glass factory in the Isle of Wight in southern England. The glassworks is called Alum Bay. It's still there. It's thriving. Where you can buy everything from little trinkets of Isle of Wight sand to vases, trophies, doorknobs, and cork stoppers. So this is the kind of touristic element that kind of relates very much to the performance of particularly glass crafts. So processes often make for good television or good performance, but we must remind ourselves of the kind of spectacle nature of these displays, both live performance and filmed performance. And I go back to Glenn Adamson's invention of craft, where he talks in the context of the Victorian era again, that this period of this expansion of explanation of how craft is done shouldn't stop us thinking about mystery and magic. So he says, and I quote, like a conjurer's trick, even when seen up close, craft processes do not reveal themselves entirely, nor can they be easily repeated. And I think there's this sense that just because you know how something is made, or you can see it explained scientifically or on a video, doesn't mean that the magic has gone. And that kind of related to a point that a question note that I had the Reinhold talk about, and one of the questions from the back about science being an explaining procedure. Yes, it is, and very comprehensive at that, but that doesn't mean that mystery is somehow gone, even when those scientists themselves were coming up with this kind of ways and means of documenting the world. I think we see that with the kind of performance and evidence of craft demonstrations. Very quickly, another form of documentation that I did include in Tendenza was that of supporting written information and artists' notes. So this is Felica van der Lest's Prairie Pioneer, which was perhaps the most spectacular object, or the most showpiece-like object. It's in the Code National Collection in Bergen. But I accompanied this object with the material sketches that went alongside it, that evidence Felix van der Lest's excessive amount of time that she spends in making the object, as well as the crochet pattern book that is used to make the garments for her small sculptures. So this is just something that really every craftsperson, I'm sure, every maker is aware of, the amount of time that it takes to make any of these works, the amount of process, the amount of kind of hard graft that goes behind the finished object. I just wanted to communicate that in some way to provide evidence. So just thought to kind of have that as another element. Mainly the kind of evidence was filmic or screenic. This was one other form that we kind of looked at. Okay, so to conclude. I want to move away from film. You don't have to stick to a video or other documentary media in the sense of placing it next to an object to establish this connection to everyday materiality and process. Objects, as we've already seen, have internal dramas all by themselves by just sitting on the plinth. And as I hope I've suggested already, we need to be critical of the role of film and video's kind of revealing function. So here we have the necklace of Karin Roy Anderson in the Constant Grinding series, it's called, which is made up of chewing gum that she has chewed during runs throughout Gothenburg where she lives. And then as I let the chewing gum blobs dry, and then she set them into a necklace. The one on the right was made specifically for Tendenza last year and represents the duration of time from when I invited her to kind of be part of the show, and the show itself, the amount of chewing gum that she chewed in that period of time, and includes lots of small bits of paper because she kept the chewing gum in small bits of paper like we regularly do. So it's a bit more of a rugged and certainly more fragile iteration of her series. And also Sophie Hanegarth's Q necklace, which is made up of bottle tops that she has fashioned during commutes between where she worked and where she lived at the time. So like all jewellery, these necklaces emphatically link us to the corporeal, the body. As necklaces, they say, put your head here. But the material manipulation in these two works epitomize a material registration of passing time. So perhaps if we know this information, if we can read the material or follow the fissures, examine the finish, feel the object, if we can follow what the maker did, we as viewer can understand more about the object than its mediation via film, video, or any other form of documentation. The material might tell us more than any film or photo can. It might be a more trustworthy account than its appearance on film. I hope that these works and the others in the exhibition help question the role of mediating, showing, and watching making in bringing us closer to material. I wanted to consider whether seeing processes represent either an obfuscation of the spectacle, or like the kind of being bedazzled by the spectacle or distracted by the spectacle, or whether it is actually an example of democratic openness. And although we are an evidence-hungry society, we seem remarkably poor at considering the proof and the material presented before us, like lazy jurors more concerned to get home and watch some television. So one final word of caution, which I will finish. Of course, we might, in our kind of love of, or not love, or our kind of interest in new materialisms, we might want to kind of celebrate and engorge ourselves in ceramics, textiles, and the particular quality of materials. But don't disparage the screen or the filmic or the photographic as forms of documentation, or see them as a kind of bolt-on part of artistic practice. They are crafts too, and I think they play a key part in this new materialisms discourse. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there any questions?
What did you see of the response to the show and the way that people interacted with it, given what you were trying to sort of achieve?
Well, I was not there. I was only there at certain times, of course. During the opening, it was a very kind of sort of convivial environment, actually, a very pleasant sort of festival, because it happened during the Easter break. So there was a lot of people that in the gallery, not necessarily coming to see the show, but just enjoying. It was very fine weather as well, like people just enjoying being at this beautiful gallery, and you know, a kind of craft audience coming to have a look at this work. But yeah, very sort of positive, convivial. People very fascinated by the live performance, and you know, really captivated by the spectacle, which was perhaps a little bit slower than people thought it would be, in the sense that the preparation took a lot longer than just, you know, switch it on, it does it. The mixing of the resin and the kind of positioning of that material and the kind of stirring of the resin as well took a bit of time. So people were standing there like waiting a bit before the machine was turned on. Yeah, which was quite striking.
No, so in that sense, people then came away with a deeper understanding as you were trying to bring to them. Okay. Did you get any other feedback from the gallery about the way that people interacted with the show?
They've said that they've been very positive. I can't recall right now what kind of like detailed feedback, but generally it's they were very positive about it. They had a couple of they had a kind of series of special, you know, groups like any gallery does that kind of go around the show, educational tours, that kind of thing. But I can't really answer the kind of specifics of that, and I'll have to kind of talk to them.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Just a very quick question. I was in this exhibition that you curated, and I really enjoyed it. It was being very serious and also very funny, and it's seldom you walk into an exhibition with so many different emotions. So I'm kind of personally kind of interested. Do you have an upcoming curated exhibition coming up, or anything you can kind of elaborate? What is the next step in terms of having done this? What would you do next?
I'd love to do it more, but I'm a kind of lecturer, really, so I spend most of my time teaching students about kind of design history, so I haven't got any, you know, curating was like, it was a real surprise to get this, and a great pleasure, but it's not something I ever envisaged doing, and don't have any particular plans upcoming. I do, however, think that there was a lot in this show which could, you know, go into lots of different outputs, whether that's further shows or writing. For me, I'm always thinking, you know, about the writing, being a kind of historian by training. That's kind of my thing, but I know that other people often have better ideas about what to do with your work than you do. But yeah, nothing so far, but these themes are definitely still current in my mind in terms of the mediation of craft and how it is portrayed on the screen and the video. And the publication itself is a kind of fantastic kind of documentation from 5 scholars across the world who have looked at this kind of specific subject. So there's, if you're kind of interested in that, that's the kind of place to go. But yeah, I really want to kind of take some of the themes in this lecture actually, or this talk, and maybe develop them into kind of written pieces, you know, as well. But yeah, it's also was facilitated by a fantastic team at Gallery F15 that really did sort of move with the changing dynamics of putting the show together, of having video with objects, and the film itself of the Alby Kringle being made was a very much kind of collaboration with that Texas, who actually did the film. That was it was a really good collaborative project, where it's a gallery, the production company, and a kind of discussion that we had kind of a couple of years ago now, with this idea of self-referential craft taking place. But yeah, well, just continue working on the same themes, definitely, because they are enjoyable. I mean, I do like seeing the links back to kind of the 19th century, and how this kind of spectacle culture and it goes alongside this thirst for evidence. But yeah, and I think all exhibitions should be kind of it's a kind of element of humour. Serious humour is always good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Any more questions? I have a question, a banal question, but speaking of time, how much time did you use to plan and make the exhibition? How much time did the artists get to work on the work?
So it was all started about a kind of year before, or 9 months I would say before. So kind of the first visit to Gallery F15 to discuss the preliminary ideas was in June, before the March, April the previous year. So it's a kind of, that's when the work started, so less than a year. And then the kind of initial period of real anxiety of like the artist list, what that is and how to kind of arrange them all around a theme, was the first task. And then there's a bit of a lull in sort of August, September time, and it picked up again. And then there was a real heightened sense of activity and time-consuming labours from Christmas till the opening, particularly in February last year. It was pretty intense because the publication changed its course from being something to something else, which I completely was happy with because it made it more of a kind of standalone sort of edited volume about a theme rather than just an artist an exhibition catalogue. But that publication was done in like 2 or 3 months, which I think is one of the fastest publications that I've ever seen take place, largely down to the kind of very quick response of the writers. So yeah, there's kind of peaks and troughs, but overall 9 months. And then the artists would have been contacted latest in September. I think we had a final list, even though the Q necklace came in, that was like a few weeks before the show was on. Sophie kind of said that she was going to send this necklace because we lost contact with her. We didn't have contact with her from like September till February. So it was a debate whether this was going to be in it, but I'm glad that it was, obviously. And it went in the hallway. So perhaps that's kind of, it was our slight, well, you can't have a go at us if it's in the hallway because it was the last thing we had. You can't kind of be upset with us for being in the hallway because you weren't on time.
Okay, if there's not any more question, we'll say thank you to Stephen. And as I mentioned earlier, the book that was made for this exhibition is available for purchase in the bookstore.